This is Mac OS Ken.
Another downer note on iPhone sales. Little worry over the EU and the App Store, and the next round of OS betas is already rolling. It is Thursday, the 15th of December, 2022. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/macosken. This show is also sponsored by SimpliSafe, the right way to protect your home with a great deal to boot. Right now, SimpliSafe is offering Mac OS Ken listeners, that's you, a free indoor security camera plus 20% off your order with interactive monitoring. One of the things I have always liked about SimpliSafe is how they let you build the system that's right for you. They're not sending you a bunch of stuff you don't need or want. If you do need an indoor security camera, though, they're giving you one for free, plus 20% off the other stuff you need. SimpliSafe systems are way easy to set up. I had mine going in under an hour. And the interactive monitoring, that's great. Ready to send help the moment it is needed, SimpliSafe's 24/7 professional monitoring keeps an eye out for trouble for under $1 a day. That is less than half the price of ADT's traditional, professionally installed system. Start the new year with increased security and peace of mind. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplisafe.com/macOSKen. Go today and claim that free indoor security camera plus 20% off your order with interactive monitoring. SIMPLI. That's simplisafe.com/macOSKen. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. Another Apple watching financial analyst is leaning less positive on iPhone sales. Not for this quarter, of course. The December quarter is going to be ghastly. That said, a number of analysts think sales of iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max missed this quarter will be made up in the March quarter. Not all analysts agree, and you can add another to that list. Apple 3.0 ran part of a note Wednesday from UBS analyst David Vogt. Basically, he seems to think the wait is too long, stretching now to the second week of January in the States. Delivery times are starting to overlap regular seasonal slowdowns in his estimation, and that is resulting in perishability. In other words, sales lost, not sales deferred. For the December quarter, Vogt's dropped unit expectations from 83 million to 79 million. For the March quarter, he dropped unit expectations from 61 million to 58. All of that is enough to get him to drop iPhone revenue by about 3% in fiscal year 23, and that is enough to bring Apple's total revenue for fiscal year 23 down roughly 2%. Less than ideal to be sure, and yet he's still a fan. Mr. Vogt has a buy rating on Apple shares. The firm's price target on the shares is $180. Sideloading in third-party app stores are no business worry for Apple. That is the thinking of a couple of Apple-watching financial analysts. I told you yesterday of a Bloomberg report that has Apple prepping for sideloading in third-party app stores, perhaps as early as next fall with the anticipated release of iOS 17. That would be for EU member states only, according to the piece. It's a long way off, but money is money, and it likes to know when or whether to worry. Apple 3.0 ran a couple of reaction notes. We'll start with one from Evercore analyst Amit Daryanani. He gives clients a few reasons to not worry. Quoting his note, the impact from sideloading will likely be minimal, and we expect the App Store to remain the main avenue for app discovery, as it's unlikely customers will be interested in this more complex method of downloading an app. There are also significant security concerns with sideloading, which may give Apple some flexibility in how they implement this feature. Where he does see cause for concern is the EU's insistence that Apple allow third-party payment systems in apps. While Darianani seems doubtful that the average user will want to share payment information with more parties rather than sticking with Apple's payment system, Apple may be forced to lower the commissions it charges to keep people from flipping, in his estimation. Whatever happens eventually, the analyst does seem to see it as not a big deal right now. Darianani maintains an outperform rating on Apple shares. Evercore's 12-month price target on the shares is $190. About as unfazed as Darianani is Morgan Stanley analyst Eric Woodring. According to his note, he and his don't believe this potential change presents a material risk to Apple's App Store or services revenue or ecosystem strength. The way they see it, even if the sideloading and third-party App Store things happen, and if every App Store user in the EU bugged out, bringing Apple's App Store sales commissions to zero in that region, Woodring says it would equate to just a 4% hit to services revenue, a 1% hit to Apple's total revenue, and a roughly 2.5% hit to Apple's earnings per share. Needless to say, he does not see any of that happening. Now, if legislation like what's coming in the EU were to go global, Woodring says the core question becomes whether consumers decide to speak with their wallets and abandon the App Store for alternative options. Our survey work shows a very low likelihood of this scenario playing out, as Apple's customers have long prioritized the security, centralization, and convenience that the App Store brings. Woodring even sees a way that the EU App Store changes could benefit, not hinder, Apple shares. The threat of regulation may have acted as an overhang, while the regulation is now a known thing. Mr. Woodring maintains an overweight rating on Apple shares. Morgan Stanley's price target on the shares is $175. It seems like only yesterday that Apple released updated operating systems for just about everything it makes. Of course, it was actually day before yesterday. Still, one day after all those updates, the first build of the next updates were out to developers. Mac Rumors ran a number of pieces Wednesday about various new builds out to Apple's developer crew. They include reports of iOS and iPadOS 16.3, macOS Ventura 13.2, watchOS 9.3, and tvOS 16.3. While it's hard to get too excited about anything in such early betas, one promised security feature seems to be making its way. Another piece from Mac Rumors says support for security keys for Apple ID turned up in the iOS, iPadOS, and macOS developer betas. Announced just last week, Apple described this feature then, saying security keys strengthens Apple's two-factor authentication by requiring a hardware security key as one of the two factors. This takes the company's two-factor authentication even further, preventing even an advanced attacker from obtaining a user's second factor in a phishing scam. It's probably a feature any user could use. Still, the Cupertino company says it's really meant for high-profile targets like activists, journalists, celebrities, and members of government, and testing on it is underway. More news in a moment, but first a word from today's sponsor, BetterHelp. Online therapy. Could you benefit from talking to a counselor? With traditional counseling, that can be a problem. By the time you are ready or feel ready to talk to a counselor, could still be weeks before you see somebody. You got to find someone in your area. You got to find somebody who has openings. You got to find somebody who deals with whatever you want or need to deal with. This is one of the things that I appreciate about BetterHelp. They have a huge number of online counselors dealing with a number of areas of focus. In other words, when you are ready, BetterHelp is waiting. As the world's largest therapy service, BetterHelp has matched 3 million people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists, available 100% online. Plus, it's affordable. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to match with a therapist. If things aren't clicking, you can easily switch to a new therapist anytime. It couldn't be simpler. No waiting rooms, no traffic, no endless searching for the right therapist. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/macOSKen. That's betterhelp.com/macOSKen. betterhelp.com/macOSKen. A limited series Apple TV Plus drama has gotten a premiere date. Apple Insider has news on the series Dear Edward, the first title to come out of Apple's overall deal with Friday Night Lights creator Jason Katims. Announced in February, the piece says the series tells the story of Edward Adler, played by Colin O'Brien, who survives a plane crash that kills every other passenger on the flight, including his family. As he tries to make sense of his life after the tragedy, unexpected friendships, romances, and communities are formed. Palmer director Fisher Stevens directs the first episode. Other stars in the show include Taylor Schilling of Orange is the New Black, and Connie Britton of the series Nashville, and, of course, Friday Night Lights. Dear Edward premieres on Apple TV Plus on Friday, the 3rd of February. 2 more Apple TV Plus titles about which to tell you, each dealing with sports ball. First, the Cupertino Company issued a press release Wednesday announcing a 2-part documentary on tennis star Boris Becker. Whole thing feels kind of weird, to be honest. According to the release, the Apple original Docuseries includes 3 years of exclusive access to Becker before his sentencing in April of 2022. Criminal, but not creepy, apparently. The release says Becker was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison for hiding assets and loans to avoid paying his debts. According to the release, the Untitled series aims to explore every aspect of the man who became a tennis sensation after winning the Wimbledon Championships at the age of just 17, going on to win 49 career titles, including 6 Grand Slams and an Olympic gold medal, as well as his high-profile, sometimes tumultuous, personal life. The Untitled series, 3 years of filming, he went away almost a year ago, and they don't have a title? What about Bounce It Like Becker? Yeah, maybe they just don't want to tell us the title yet. Okay, no title, but lots of big names. Produced by Searching for Sugar Man's John Batzik and directed by Oscar winner Alex Gibney, interviewees include Becker himself, members of his immediate family, and tennis stars including John McEnroe, Bjorn Borg, and others. To go with the lack of title, a lack of release date. No word in the release on when whatever it's called will land in the stream. Kind of makes you wonder why they announced it. And finally today, I am starting to think that Apple's into this whole soccer thing. The Mac Observer says Apple TV Plus has announced a new 4-part sports documentary called Super League: The War for Football, which takes an intimate look into European football and a scandal that almost changed the game forever. Apparently the incentive structure was weird and controversial or something. I'd read you the description, but I'm afraid I'd spoil it. Also, I'm afraid one or both of us would fall asleep. I mean, the trailer is kind of interesting. You can catch that on YouTube if you want to. I think I would rather see the Aaron Sorkin movie about all of it. Then again, I'm not a soccer fan. Or a football fan. Or a football fan, come to think of it. The docuseries precedes Apple's Major League Soccer premiere in February. Super League: The War for Football hits Apple TV Plus on Friday, the 13th of January. Hey, cool, we got one of those coming up. Today on the Mac Observer's Daily Observations podcast, Bloomberg says Apple is prepping iOS for third-party app stores and app sideloading in the EU as early as next fall. TMO writer Nick DeCorville joined me to talk over potential pros and cons, plus early takes on the talk from a couple of financial analysts. That is all today on the Daily Observations podcast from the Mac Observer, online at macobserver.com or wherever you get podcasts. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and sponsored by SimpliSafe. Get a free indoor security camera plus 20% off your order with interactive monitoring at simplysafe.com/macOSKen. This show is also sponsored by BetterHelp, online therapy. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/macOSKen. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. Info at macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Cha.